Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a decorative plant hanger. We're starting with a piece of 3/8 inch round stop, or 9.5 mil. And we're starting with a piece that is about 5 foot long, or roughly 1,500 millimeter long. Which, what is that? About 2 meters of material? 2.5 meters of material? Let me know in the comment section down below. So the first step in this, we're just going to draw out a taper. We're going to draw out a nice sinuous taper because this is going to become a scroll. We're going to draw this taper for about 4 to 6 inches. We want a really nice thin taper to this. But we're not going to take and scroll it up yet. All we're doing is drawing out a taper on this end. We're going to flip it around, we're going to draw a taper on the other end, and then we're going to fold this piece together and forge weld the end of it that will actually go into our mounting plate or our mounting bracket against the wall. The lovely thing about 3/8 material is it does not take long to draw out. And it doesn't take long to heat up, so that's so nice. So we're just looking for one really nice, long, symmetrical taper. So there's heat number 2. It's kind of cold, getting a little cold. We're going to go ahead and heat that back up. So we want a nice smooth taper on this. We just want this to be drawn out. This isn't a vine. We're not trying to really influence anything super organic here. All we're wanting is a piece that has a nice taper on the end. So take some extra time and care to get this nice and rounded up and taking out your hammer marks. It's worth the extra time right now, because once you've turned this into a scroll, there's nothing you can do to get back in there. So we'll just take the time. You don't have to get every hammer mark out. It's okay. It is a hand-forged product, but you do want to get this fairly smooth and regular in shape. You want it to have a nice shape to it. So I'll take one more light heat on that just to finish rounding it up. Then we'll switch it over to the other end. Okay, so now that we have this heated up in the center, we drew out both ends. We're going to go ahead and give it a bend. Now I've done it, I went ahead and gave it a pre-mark right where I needed it to bend at. So this should be really nice and easy to find that bend mark. I'm just going to set it on the edge. We're going to just drive this down to where it makes that a little bit more prominent. I'll grab the end here. Right on around we go. Now I drew one of these ends out a lot longer than the other one, so you're going to see a difference between the two ends once it's been folded down. I did that because it's going to have a little bit longer of a scroll attached to it. So you can see I drew that one out a lot longer than what I've done the other one. So these are just little conscientious choices that I'm making as I do this project. In this particular case, I'm not actually working towards a specific design. I've just got an ideal in my head and I'm just going with it. So if you have a specific design drawn, you need to take a pair of dividers and walk them, or a piece of string or whatever, and figure out the exact length you need for each section and incorporate that in your overall piece. So now that this is ready to go, we're going to go ahead and heat this thing up to a nice welding heat. We're going to come out and go ahead and weld this. Out we go. There's our first initial stick. And we're going right back in the fire before it gets too oxygenated. We don't want to let the oxygen propagate into the joint, the welding planes, at this point creating hard scale that we can't blow out of there with our hammer blows. So get it hot, get it stuck, put it right back in the fire. Later on, this end will be drawn down into a tenon that will go through the back plate. So it's good to take your time and get a really good weld on this. Get your stuff ready to go. Out you go. Take your time and work those two pieces together. Definitely got some liquid metal on that one. All right, we'll take this one more heat. I'll take one more heat on this, welding heat, and just round it up ever so lightly. So it'll be a lighter welding heat, doesn't have to be a big welding heat. We're just gonna knock off the corners just so it's not so sharp. Also, while we work on this end, we might as well go ahead and draw down the tenon at this point in time. Now, you can wait to do this portion. You can grind it in if you're not comfortable with making shoulders for tenons. If you happen to have a guillotine tool, it really does make this life, making tenons on the end here a lot easier. But it's not a necessity. You can draw decent tenons down at the edge of the anvil if you've got a good sharp edge on your anvil and a fairly sharp hammer face, square to the anvil face. You can do that. It takes a little bit of extra work, but you can make that happen. So I'm just going to round that off just a bit, just so this way it doesn't look so square. There, that looks good. I can clean this up, and that's been welded. Now the next thing is we are going to go ahead and draw down a tenon on this. Another option for drawing down a tenon that's oftentimes not discussed, but is just as viable of an option, is to use a set hammer in the edge of your anvil. So you hold the piece between your legs, you find a spot on your anvil that kind of matches the shouldering that you're wanting, the amount of material you need, basically, and you just give it a whack. We'll want to do this nice and hot, but we can start the material forming down into our tenon just like that. There's a lot of ways of doing the same thing you'll find in blacksmithing, so don't be beholden to just one method. Try them all because you never know when you're going to need that information. So just like this is just a piece of set hammer. This is a piece of 1045 steel that I just drew a taper on, punched a hole, and put a hammer handle through it. But you left the face square. Now this could have easily just been wrapped with some steel and held like a spring in your hand type deal, and that would work well. And this is a soft face hammer. I'm just lining it up with my edge and driving that material down to draw out a little bit of a tenon. We'll pull the piece out. I'm going to find those edges again. As you draw this down, it'll become more apparent where those edges are. So that's good. Now we're just going to go ahead and square up here. You don't really have to tenon. You really don't have to draw it down from two sides. You just need to draw it down from the one to create the tenon to go through the back plate. So you just really need just enough shoulder there to catch. So we're going to heat that up one more time and draw that tenon down just a fuzz more. All right, it's nice and hot. Register the shoulder. Nice square tenon now. I'll clean that up a little bit with the belt sander later on. Use the tools that you have to make the project easier on yourself. If you got a belt sander, great. If that's easier than waiting to file this shoulder square, then just use the belt sander or angle grinder or whatever you're doing. Okay, so now that we've got that end done, now it's time to work on our scrolls. So I'll let this end cool off naturally for a bit, let it cycle down, and then I'll be right back with you when we're ready to start doing this little bit of scroll work here we got going on. Okay, so I let that piece cool down naturally, and now we're going to take the longer end of this piece that we drew out a lot longer, and we're going to go ahead and start our scroll work right here, starting with it. You can leave this as loose or as tight of a scroll as you like. I'm just going to go with whatever looks good to me. But you'll start seeing why we've left the amount of length we did here in just a second. Go ahead and get this brushed up here. You're going to be real careful not to leave a whole bunch of flats on this. You know, it's okay to get some straighten up work here, balancing it and whatnot. You can leave a few hammer marks on this. It's not too big of a deal, but we just want to start our scroll. Now each time I go in the fire here, I'm going to get it a little longer. I'm going to take a little longer heat on the piece. You do, however, have to make sure that you be careful of the second scroll. That secondary scroll area, you want to make sure that you don't overheat it. You don't want to burn off the tip right now because that first one is just at the tip of the other one. So make sure it stays closer out of the fire. You don't want to have it turn down in the fire necessarily. So let it lay parallel in the fire as this grows, and once it gets past the fire, then you can turn it upright and be okay. But just remember that tip will heat up quicker than the thicker material that's sitting right next beside it. Just something to keep in mind. So we're going to go ahead and hammer that a little bit better. We don't want to have any flat spots if we can keep from it. And get that out of the way just a bit. I want to keep going. Go ahead and get this hot one more time. And we're just going to keep progressing this right up the bar. And you'll see why it was important for us to have the length of bar that we have started with once these bands start getting bigger, once these hoops got bigger. And we just keep continuing this bend right on around. Take your time with it. Each time you come around, this is going to get a little bit more tricky to work on, but don't rush this portion. We don't want to rush this portion. You do, however, want to keep bending this other scroll a bit out of the way to give yourself some room. So just keep doing that. Let's go wrong. This is going to get progressively shorter very quickly. Takes a good bit of stock in a piece. Takes a good amount of material in a piece like this to take into a scroll. If you happen to find that you've got so much material like this, again, I didn't measure anything out. Let's say you decide, hey, you know what, this is really getting just too big. I don't like that amount of material. Just go ahead and forge weld it somewhere, chop the excess off, and then finish out your scrolls. You've really got enough length here, you can do what you want to it. So, you know, don't be afraid to make those rapid design changes. Let's say you got too much material, just cut off the material that will have another tenon drawn on it, and you're good. So it's better to have too much material than not enough. Too much material you can always cut off and redraw out an end to the right size. If you don't have enough material, the only thing you can do is weld it on, and that might end up looking goofy in the final piece. So every time I put this back in, I'm trying to get a longer heat on it. You don't have to have super high heats on this because we're just bending, we're not drawing this out. So it doesn't have to be just nuclear hot, bright, white, yellow. Okay, let it get hot, bright orange, bright orange, dull orange. Don't let it get below a cherry red because then it just starts kinking in areas. So you want it to be a nice bright orange and work it till about a dull orange to cherry red, and then put it back in the fire. Again, this is an organic bracket that's going to go in a garden. It's going to just hang off a post or the side of a house, and then it's going to have a plant, flowers and stuff in it. So it's a really organic bracket. Now, if you were doing this for a sign, a custom sign or something like that would hang from it, you might want to have a little more straight lines with some curly cues or something like that, and be a little bit more methodical about your lengths of material that you have. But considering this is just all organic, it doesn't really matter. It's just whatever looks good to the eye. So every time we take another pass, we keep making it longer and longer heats. That is really a good secret to doing good scroll work, is taking those longer, progressively longer heats. And I'm going to keep hammering this thing out of the way. Later on, I'm going to be doing something else to this piece. But it's not going to be a complete scroll though, so that's why I'm keeping it out of the way. But there we go. So you'll want to have this nice sinuous scroll with no flat spots. Told you the piece is getting shorter and shorter all the time. Again, take another really long heat. Your heats for good scroll work should just, so the scroll's hanging out of the fire, say the anvil, the width of this anvil is the fire pot. You want just the end of the last heat barely into the fire pot, and the rest of it sitting outside in the area that you're wanting to heat up in that fire pot area. So you want that to be the hottest portion, but with a little trail off into the previous portion that's been bent. Otherwise, if you have a hot cold line, so this line's really has went down below the forging temperature or bendable or whatever, and then this area is really super hot and liquidy, now you're going to be bending this, and you go to bend it and it'll leave a kink right where that is at the edge of the fire pot. So that's what you've got to have, this nice gradient of heat and temperature as you go. Get a little extra air in this fire pot and get it going. Another nice long heat. We're just going to keep getting this nice arc established. Watch that you don't develop flat spots. That area there was a little tight, so we're going to have to address that by pulling on it just a bit. That'll get that out of there. If you notice that it's something that can be fixed, now's the time to fix it, right? If you notice that you've done a boo-boo, go ahead and fix it while you've got the chance. All right, getting a good brushing on this. And now I'm gonna get another heat on there. And we're almost getting up to this point. By the time I take this next heat, we're gonna be real close to this end of this scroll being done, and we're working on the next one. There's this little area in here that's wanting to kink up on me, and because I'm trying to work around this other bit here. So that's one of the issues that you might face when working with this. Again, just take your time though. Take your time and do it right. It's worth being done right. Okay, so I've switched to a bending fork here to just try to make my life a little bit easier getting in here by this other piece. You just take little incremental bites with the bending fork. That's the main character difference than with you're doing your regular forging on your hammer. You just take small little bites, but be sure, again, that you don't end up creating other issues by taking too small of rigid bites that you create little flat spots. So just be careful of that. So there we go, we got that piece going on. Very nice. Now we're gonna make this piece, follow this piece down, and then do what it's going to do. Okay, so I've decided I don't want this much material, so I'm just gonna go ahead and cut off that end. Okay, get that out of the way. I'm gonna go ahead and just redraw it down. Again, the advantages of having too much material versus not enough. If you don't have enough material, you'd have to do a lot of drawing out, or you would have to do a lot of, you'd either be doing a lot of drawing out or you'd have to do some welding to get it back up to where it needs to be. So I'd much rather have too much material than not enough. But we're gonna go ahead and draw that tip out there real quick. I've got the other bit of it where I want it to be. Now you might be saying, but Roy, what a waste. You know, I mean, you should have calculated it better. And yeah, you're right. A lot of this, again, I just decided before I would make this project, like 15 minutes before shooting this video, I said, you know what? Here's a little doodle on the pad. Let's just make it. It'll make a good YouTube video, and I think somebody will find there's some quality content there. So I didn't need to take and draw. I didn't need to take and make this a big thing. I just needed to get it done. You know, so. And burn it along the way, you know? It's getting progressively shorter. But with organic work, it's okay to do that. Again, if you have too much material, just say so and cut the piece off to length to where it looks good. If the work needs to be exacting, by all means, make sure you do your calculations before you get started. So I'm going to get this nice and straightened up. Now we'll continue to draw that end down a little bit. This time not get sidetracked by the camera there for a second. So just drawing this down nice. Again, creating a nice 6-inch long taper or so. Or 150 mil long taper. We don't have to go razor thin out here at the edge. And we're starting to look nice. It's starting to be what I want. Take a little more time here and draw this out. And then go ahead and round it up. All right, nice and clean, all rounded up. Now to do the final little bit. So we're gonna go ahead and start back here, real close to this other bin, and we're going to go ahead and give this an arc following this scroll right here. So we want this to we want this to come down and then come out. So that's what we're going to work on. We'll get that right in the fire, up nice and close to where the tongs will be. So we'll be getting that in, heated up. So if you've seen how quickly I kind of just recovered from the fact that it was too long and I just went right along. So I could have easily just edited all this out or just not have shown this video and went again with exacting measurements, right? To make me seem like a real, you know, a real big smart pants, right? But I've leave things like this in my videos to show that this is just part of the process. Sometimes you make things too long. Sometimes you have a hole that blows out the side of a piece of material that you've been working on for days. Just sometimes things like this happen. Don't get upset. Don't give it no, you know, place in your mind. Just get the work done. That's it. If it doesn't turn out right, no worries. Throw it on the floor. Whatever, start again. They make more steel, okay? So a lot of guys, and I did this for a lot of years, I would get so wound up that I just didn't get it perfect the first time. But I am an imperfect person, and so you will hardly ever get it right the first time. And to a large degree, stuff like this can be highly experimental. So for instance, like I said, this sign bracket, I didn't have this measured out. Not sign bracket, excuse me. Thinking of a job I got later on this week. This is just a plant hanger. I didn't really think this out. I just kind of have a concept in my head and said, sure, let's go for it. How much material I need? Let's just go with this amount, right? Because I wanted to take and get a YouTube video done today. I wanted to get this plant hanger done and put in the Etsy store. Stuff like that, right? So I was just ready to go ahead and just knock this out and get it going. Didn't have to put a lot of thought into it. Ended up something was too long, chopped it off, redraw it out of taper. Simple as that, moving on with life, right? So do the same in your work and you'll be happy you did. Okay, so now real simple, we're going to support this scroll here as we hammer this piece down. To match that arc or that curve, you want to support the scroll from underneath. There's a good place for it to kind of start tapering off, I think. I'm going to start to get a little bit uncurved there. We just want it to have this nice roll to it here. See, like that? Really nice roll. It's really good to observe plants sometimes to just see how they interact. How the blades of grass come together and you know, stuff like that, where they join at. Observing some of those things sometimes really help you get your mind wrapped around why organic work should be really worked at to try to be very sinuous and curves and things meeting, not at direct right angles or 90-degree angles. So there we go, we've got that. Now this end's going to come up. Okay, here we go. So I'm just going to kind of draw it across the horn of the anvil. I'm not hitting against the horn of the anvil. I'm just trying to establish some curvature to this piece. That's looking pretty all right. Just like so. Look pretty good. Again, it's just more of a long bend than a short one. You guys see how that's starting to turn out. Now we'll go ahead and work on the end. And now at this point, I'm going to grab a pair of scrolling tongs because I want an organic little viney bit on the end. So we can just bring it out, set it here, and just do little organic viney things to it. We're going to put the bending forks up in here just so this way we have a extra area that we can pry against if we need to give it some more leverage. So this will work out pretty good here. So now I can take and go ahead and start getting some latitude to this. I'm just trying to get this to kind of bend around and have a bit of a loop. So that way when you hang your planter on there, it doesn't have a tendency to slip off. Go ahead and get that hot again. It is my suggestion that the overall length of this piece, when you're done, to extend out at least about a foot from the house or the post or whatever. So this way you can get a fairly large basket plant hanger underneath it. If they hang a smaller plant hanger on it, it's okay. But if they want to put a nice big plant hanger on here, you need the room for the basket to not knock up against the house or post or whatever it is that you're doing. Okay. Again, holding it to give me a leverage point. Gave that just a little bit too much curl. Okay. Starting to get planty and very viney-like. Take your time with this and express yourself artistically. And remember, this is a viney kind of thing. We're going for organic, so you know, if it's not quite where you want it, keep working with it until you get it where you need it, you know. If you've got to give it more curl somewhere else, by all means, give it more curl somewhere else so it gets to looking like you want it to be. If you're working towards a drawing, that's nice because then you can actually have a drawing to work towards, you know, and that's very beneficial. Okay, I'm really liking how that's looking. I'm thinking that's looking pretty darn good. It gives it that little vine at the end. There is a straight section here though, however, that I do not like. So I'll heat that up in some successive heats and get a little more curl on that one. Having a little straight in there isn't too bad. Not all of it needs to be curls, but I like to have quite a bit of curl to it, so. I just heat it up just a fuzz and give this a little more, just a little more dimension. Boom. And that's where it should be. Give everything a good brushing. And that's going to be it for this portion. So this video's went on long enough for me today. I will go ahead and we'll put this aside and we will get on to the back plate portion in the next video. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like this video, you know, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And if you'd love to take and help support videos, you know, content like this in the future, a great way of you doing that is checking out our website over at blacksmithpdfs.com. So without further ado, as always, God bless you, and we will catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.